Tonight, we are very fortunate to be speaking to Donna Stewart. Donna is a professional working medium, spiritual development coach, and public speaker with over 20 years' experience in the United Kingdom and around the world. She has reunited thousands of people with their loved ones in spirit through her demonstrations in theaters, spiritual centers, television, and on the radio. Donna works regularly with some of the UK's most respected mediums and is a speaker and a lecturer at seminars, conferences, and workshops around the world. Donna is also a blogger and a broadcaster where she shares her knowledge and experience of spirits to a wide variety of the public. So, Donna, a very, very warm welcome to you. Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you, Mark, for such a lovely introduction as well. And hello, everybody. It's absolutely lovely to be here with you all.
Great. So, Donna, I'm very interested in how you actually got started in this work in the first place.
Well, mine was actually slightly different to the way that some people come into this, because I've been aware of spirits since I was a child. I remember when I was a very small child, I was actually born at home, and apparently the house that I was born in was very quiet until I arrived, and then the spirit people kind of came with me. And I have lots of early memories of feeling and sensing spirit around, and that kind of carried on. But as I became older, it became more psychic rather than spirit. But I always had a knowing that somebody was there or by my side, and an insight really into things that would happen. I'd have precognitive dreams, etc. And as you go through kind of adolescence and life's experiences, as I'm sure some of the our lovely guests this evening will know, that things change. They either go quieter, or that kind of energy starts to really wake up in your life. So really, it just was there with me all of my life. I have to say, I didn't always understand it. When I was a teenager, I was terrified of it. And I used to hide under the bedclothes, and I was afraid to think about spirit in case somebody transfigured in the room. Had no knowledge whatsoever, really, and had a sort of on-off relationship of being really quite terrified of the whole concept of what was going on, but being fascinated. So it served me very well throughout a lot of my life until I came to my early 30s. And I quite by chance, by coincidence, not at all, came into contact with a healer. Now, I had never been to a spiritualist church. I had never had a reading in my life. I'd only ever read one of the books from the late, great Doris Stokes, and I don't think I'd ever spoken to a medium or a healer. So I was clueless, Mark, absolutely clueless. And I'd had this situation where I was viewing my life ahead in front of me a few moments at a time. I wasn't eating properly, sleeping. Spirit would come to me in the night. It was just absolute chaos, and I'm sure some of our guests this evening can resonate with that. It just seemed as though I was never switched off, and I didn't know anybody that I can actually ask. So I was brought into contact with this particular healer, became a very good friend and mentor to me. And she said, "Oh, I think you need to go to a spiritualist church and take some development." Now, as it happened, in our tiny little village, there was a development class starting right at the top of my road, which was unheard of. And it was actually led by a lovely tutor, one of Britain's finest tutors, Maureen Mernon, who I didn't know this at the time, and she was on her early journey. But I didn't want to develop. I didn't want to be a medium. I wanted to shut it off, turn the noise off, and go back to living. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't have any aspirations to do anything other than get some normality. So I remember going along to this class on my first night, and Maureen asked everybody what they were hoping to achieve. And in my naivety, I said to her, "Well, actually, I'm not being rude, but I'm not actually going to be staying for very long. Could you just switch this off for me, please? Then I can go back to ordinary living and everything's going to be okay." And she just smiled at me and said, "I don't think so." And the rest was kind of, as they say, history, because within 2 or 3 weeks from going to the class, I just began to realize through her guidance and her experience that I could help somebody. Once I realized that, it changed everything. And I chose to follow the path of development. And here I am. So, as I said, not quite the same as some people's, but mine was by default, I thought.
Yeah, but those your childhood must have been quite difficult then, dealing with a lot of that sort of spirit presence and seeing stuff and hearing stuff and knowing stuff must have been really quite a challenge for you.
It was a challenge at many times, but you see, I was very fortunate because unbeknown to me, my parents kind of knew something was going on with me. My mother was quite interested in mediumship and my father was terrified of it. And I didn't know until much later in life that they quietly used to have conversations and try to keep life as normal as possible. But it was. But the other thing as well is I suppose it made me feel different to some other people. So kids at school weren't quite sure what to make of me. I very quickly learned what not to say. So yes, it was a challenge at times, energetically as well as emotionally.
And tell me then, when you started development, how did that unfold for you? And how did your first few readings go?
Well, my development started very quickly. I started developing in the April of 1997, and by Christmas I was actually out on the rostrum taking my first spiritualist church service. And I didn't have anything to compare it with because, bearing in mind, I didn't know anybody other than my few newfound friends. But my tutor was very good and she recognized that it was just time and that I just, it was just, I was ready for that. So she gave me some very quick, intense stuff and she took me out with her, and that was such an amazing thing for her to do. My first few readings, I think really when I look back, one of the things that I realized was that when I started, I'd already had some quite good training over a short space of time. You notice the emphasis on training, and I think that's why it's so important to me for training, because I know what it did for me. Without it, it would have been very messy and I'd have probably got into a bit of an energetic mess. So the first few, I think I was just so enthusiastic. I think I just wanted to tell everybody about it. I'm sure people hid from me. Yes, oh, here she comes again, the spiritualist. Because having discovered this, I just thought, I want to share this with everyone. So I was probably a bit cringeworthy at the time to those that didn't understand.
And you've explained and you've mentioned that once you realized you could help some people, that you embraced it. How does this change people's lives? Like, what is the impact that you can have on a person's life?
Well, from my perspective, I'd like to think I've always cared about people and I've always tried to do my best to be a good person if someone needs me. And it was just, I remember being in the development group on the third week, and somebody's loved one came forward. And although we were in a development group all there to develop our own abilities, I remember her father coming very close, and he was so close, it was as if he was just here. And he was able to communicate his information to her. And she'd been waiting to hear from him for over 25 years, and he'd never come forward, and he was very specific. Now, for me, that was obviously, it was lovely that the spirit was there, but seeing the effect that it had on that particular person's life made me realize it is a life-changing thing. To take someone from not knowing where their loved ones are or if they've gone on somewhere to suddenly, we're still here, we still love you, we still care about you, and here is our proof of that, is life-changing for anyone, I believe. Because it takes away the fear, the despair. It doesn't take away the heartache, but it can move someone from believing that their loved ones have either gone forever or in actual fact, they're still there, even if it's in a different vibration.
Yeah.
I think that's powerful.
Yeah. Have you had any of your own experiences with your own ancestors or loved ones who've come to give you messages?
Well, my father passed away when I was just quite young. I was just 25, which felt young at the time. And at that point, I hadn't discovered mediumship. I hadn't done anything towards discovering until I was in my early 30s. But it was just living alongside an ability that was out of control. And on the night that my father passed away, I was sitting in a chair and I suddenly felt this enormous warmth around the chair that he used to sit in. And it was just as if he was standing behind me. And I thought in that moment that it was possible that he was still there. And I know what that did for me, and I know what comfort that gave, and also to my family and my sister, who was very young at the time. And so I was able to experience that life-changing transition for me, because I was mainly psychic through my teenage years, you see. So I had, and from when I was small, I stopped having spirit interaction when I was about 5 or 6. You know, when your conditioning comes in when you go to school, etc. And that moment for me made me realize this is real. And I think then that I will never forget what that did to help myself and my family, and how it can help others.
Yeah. How does it actually work? I mean, how is it possible that you can communicate with somebody who is physically deceased?
Okay, that's a great question. I ask that so often. But, you know, we're all spirit first and foremost. So we're spirit having a human experience. So our energy, our mind, thoughts, everything we are, the essence of us is, we come from spirit with that anyway. It's just as we come into this life, we sometimes forget that, feel disconnected from it for all kinds of reasons. So we bring with us, every single one of us has the innate ability to be aware of somebody in spirit, but it is often changed by their chemical makeup, their DNA, their belief system, all these different type of things. So what is happening is our energy that we bring with us that illuminates the physical body, and our mind energy just has that ability to receive thoughts from the spirit world. That's all it is. It's telepathy, mind to mind. And that's how it's possible. The spirit thought comes to the spirit mind in the human body, and it becomes a reality.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that when you were a teenager, you were mostly psychic. What's the difference between being psychic and being a medium?
Okay, now this is something that I think can be very confusing to people, and I think the reason why is because of the terminology that's often used through lack of understanding. So if somebody is psychic, they are working with the energy of somebody or something that is kind of still living, or perhaps if you go into an old building or a place, you can feel or know or sense something being held within the vibrational field of someone or something that we can connect to at this kind of earth level. And the connecting with the spirit level is when we are directly in contact with and can receive information and vibration from somebody who's left their physical body. So that's the difference. I tend to think of psychic kind of in front of you at this level, and spirit from this vibration.
Okay. And why would these people want to communicate with us? Like, what is the purpose for them to actually make the effort to send a message to somebody?
Well, you know, if we imagine the process of, for instance, let's imagine a loving couple, and one of them takes a transition and passes the spirit, and one is left behind. Now, grief doesn't just happen to the person who's left behind. It also exists in the mind and the heart of the person who's left. And the person who's left this vibration will have all of the emotions and all of the processing that perhaps their loved one here, you know, living in this life does. Yes, there's a lot of help, and eventually we hope that that person will move on from that grief. But it's a very two-way situation. So that person who was left may still want to say to their loved one who's grieving, look, I'm still here. You know, I'm still around you. I still know that, you know, you love me. I still love you. Maybe there's something I want to say to you that I didn't say in life. And it's about healing. It is about healing, and resolving and sharing thoughts and memories. And I think also it threads us through from the separation of passing, that even though someone has kind of left the physical body, they are still there. And there are lots of spirit that want their loved ones to know that they are still there, supporting them, guiding them, and just, you know, sharing the life with them still.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes they don't, because it's quite a difficult thing. If you're a spirit and you've left this sort of beautiful but dense planet, some don't want to make that transition, or they've nothing to come back for. Maybe people they were closest to are already there. But those that do usually have a message or a reason or comfort or healing.
Yeah, because not everybody receives messages. Is it true that everybody's trying, like if you've got a loved one who's passed recently, are they trying to get a message to us and we're just not hearing it, or have they not bothered to try? Like, not everybody has the ability to receive this message. Is our loved one trying to get a message to us?
Well, I'd like to think so. We can't statistically say who does and who doesn't, but in actual fact, Mark, the spirit may not be able to get the message across. Some of us, for your guests there that have seen the film Ghost, Patrick Swayze needed a lot of help in those early days because he didn't know what to do. And that's sometimes the case of a newly passed spirit. Through their belief, they might suddenly find they're in shock, they're still alive, they're still feeling. They might have thought that when you pass away, that's it. So they've got their own things to come to. But very often you'll find the messages, especially with newly passed people, come in different ways, like a song on the radio or a smell or a touch or something moves, not necessarily. And as you're saying, well, not everybody can receive that information, or perhaps because of the grief isn't in the right sensitive state. But there's usually something, even if it doesn't come directly to the loved one, it can perhaps come to a family member. I always think spirit want to say, I'm all right.
Yeah. So you've done a lot of work on the platforms at spiritualist churches, from what I can gather. When you're doing a public demonstration like that, does it feel like there are a lot of ancestors, a lot of spirits trying to get a message across?
Well, I think because I think discipline is really important in the way that we work, and I think that and I've been so blessed to do spiritual churches, and I've done theatres, and I've had some fabulous opportunities with Colin Fry and Tony Stockwell, and so these are the big venues, the 5,000 venues, and you think gulp, you're standing on the stage there. And what I do is, by my intention, I will usually say to the spirit world, obviously, what I'm doing, and here I am. So whoever is able to communicate and needs to get that message across, I'm here for you. But what we have to remember is that spirit is still highly intelligent. So they know that there are only, for instance, in a 2-hour demonstration with myself, there's probably going to be about 10 messages, 11 if there's a little short one. The spirit know that. So they don't all come charging to the door. You'll find there's order with the guides and the helpers, and to try and get some kind of sense. Otherwise, it just becomes overwhelming. It becomes confusing for the congregation or the audience, and the poor medium stuck in the middle, kind of pulled from pillar to post with everybody trying to go everywhere. So discipline and training, that's what's needed.
And tell me about the importance of evidence and how you go about providing evidence so that the person actually believes that the message that they're getting is legitimate.
Okay, now evidence, I'm a big evidence girl. I think evidence is so important. The message is important, the energy is important. But if we're going to represent spirit and we want to work with them, then we need to work with them in the best way so they can give that detail and that evidence, because without it, messages can seem very generic. So for instance, it might be, got a gentleman here, he has grey hair, he had a heart attack, he had breathing problems, does anybody know this man? Most people are going to raise their hand. So what we need to be doing is looking for something unique, different about them, their personality. Maybe names are always a favorite, but sometimes they don't always come in that way. But it can be appearance, distinguishing marks, where that person lived, how they passed, their memories. Those are the kinds of things that make good evidence. And I think it's really important to raise that standard of evidence so that the person who's receiving the message knows exactly who the medium is communicating with. So, you know, and the way to develop that is again through just practice, and I think setting your intention. And I think it's important to think about the kind of medium we want to be and what we want to achieve, not from a point of ego, from a point of serving spirit and how we can be the best ambassador for them.
Yeah, I remember doing part of a development class with the Spiritualist National Union, the international branch that did online classes. And I think they said that we needed to get 5 pieces of evidence. Is that right? You work for 5 pieces of evidence? I mean, I found that very difficult to do,
At least
which is
5
why I'm not a
pieces.
medium on the platform.
At least 5 pieces of evidence. But usually I can see why they say that, because you need to provide at least 5 pieces of quality information that tells the loved one who we're talking to. But yes, dive in, get more if you can, but at least 5 is really important.
Yeah. Now, Donna, I was reading your blog earlier today to prepare for this interview. And I suppose I should apologize to the audience that Cindy isn't actually doing the interview, but she developed a bit of a sore throat this morning and has a lot of teaching to do this week. So she asked me to step in. So as I was preparing, I saw that you had an interesting experience around lockdown at a place you went to work during lockdown. Can you tell us a bit about how that has helped you develop as a medium?
Oh yes, now then, how to put a very long story into a very short space of time. I mean, I've been working, I had up till that time been working professionally for 22 years. I've always been very blessed, lots of work, everything going on. And then all of a sudden it all came to a stop. And all my things that I was involved with were cancelling, and it was steering me away from that. And the reasons behind why the cancellations were I don't believe anything that was happening with me, because the feedback about the work was still positive, but it was like centres were closing, circles were ending, all of this type of thing. So I decided that what might be a good idea was just to, I needed to obviously find some more work. I was bewildered, absolutely in shock. You know, I've done this, is this all you wanted? Some notice, guys, would have been really good. But I kept my faith and just thought I would need to do something in the event of the fact that I'd done all of my service. I even thought perhaps it was time for me to go home, and they just pulled the plug ready for me to go back. So anyway, as it happened, I thought, well, what can I do? You know, I'm a medium. How do you put on your work CV that you talk to the deceased? It's just, you know, all the things you think about. What can I do to go forward? As I was helping somebody else looking for employment, I very quickly was directed, without even realising I'd touched the screen, to a position in funeral care. And I knew that that was what I had to do. And the synchronicity of it was absolutely perfect. I actually ended up going to work in the branch in my hometown where I was born, where all of the activity started. And I did a year in funeral care during the pandemic. And it was one of the busiest funeral homes in the UK. And my role was as a funeral organiser and supporting families. And again, you can imagine during the pandemic, you know, it was just extraordinary, the amount of people that came into our care. And one of my roles also was to sit with families and just support them, and to go with them to the chapels of remembrance to visit their loved ones and pay their last respects. And that could range from young children to elderly people. And I thought up until that point that I understood grief. I hoped I'd understood grief. I'd experienced myself with my family. And I'd seen a lot of people experience grief over the years. But to be in a position where you find yourself all day supporting families that have lost their loved ones in the most extraordinary of circumstances at times, it was an absolute privilege to be with them, but also very insightful to me when people would say, if only I could just have one last memory, one last word, one last goodbye. Now, obviously it wasn't appropriate to bring my mediumship into that role, but I would like to think I grew enormously during that time so that I can serve better people that have private readings. and also that I can train my students in a clearer way, having a greater understanding of the absolute importance of that evidence and that message. Once I got that, because I just didn't understand why everything had stopped, then my contract came to an end and my spirit work just escalated again. So I think that spirit sent me on an apprenticeship that I think has been incredibly valuable, was very humbling and hugely privileged to do at that time, and to take the experience from that and share that with my clients and share it with my students. So it can just be that bit better as a medium and you know, as an ambassador and sharer.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And yeah, I'm glad that it had a valuable lesson for you and your students. Now, you've got an exercise that we could do together, perhaps. You want to talk about the exercise?
Oh, I have, and I do hope you'll all join me if you'd like to do that. And it's just a short exercise, just to try and give a sense of, you know, the fact the spirit's still so close. So through this exercise for a few moments, what I'd like to try and do is just to try and get you all to feel someone that you know from the spirit world and be aware of their energy. Okay. Now, if you don't, that's absolutely fine, because it will depend on, you know, where you are in your development. But this is something that you can try that can often help. So hopefully everybody's happy to join me with this. And what we're going to do is just open up the energy for a moment, bring spirit into the energy, and I'll do that in a specific way, and then spirit will step back and then we'll just close the energy down again. Okay, so if you'd all like to join me for a moment, you can keep your eyes open if you wish, but I find eyes closed is really good for having this experience. Now, your loved ones are here, they will know what you're trying to achieve, and so they will try really hard as well and work with you as a team so that you can hopefully feel, see, or be aware of something from your spirit loved ones. So just making yourself comfortable, just settling down where you're sitting. And let's just take a moment to just breathe, the most simple, natural act of living. Just breathing in through the nose if you can, don't worry if not. And then just out through the mouth again if you can't, if that's uncomfortable, just breathe through the nose. Breathing in and breathing out. And now just allowing your breathing to continue naturally. Take a moment to find a place within the center of yourself where you're appreciating the quiet and the stillness. And now visualize or feel, if you're better at one or the other, just a small ball of light in the center of your solar plexus, just above your navel. And imagine that at around about the size of a little ball, maybe a golf ball. And just visualize or feel its brightness. And now out of that golf ball, just draw a thread of light. We're going to just put some grounding in here. So all at different levels of development in this evening session. So bringing down the energy, down through the chakra in your abdomen, which is the sacral center. Imagine it traveling through the root at the base of your spine. And just moving down, perhaps through your legs, your knees, bottoms of your feet. And then putting that energy down into the ground and just feel it spreading the light through the earth. And now take your attention back to the golf ball, just leaving the energy down there in the earth. It knows what it's doing. And now just simply allowing that ball of light to grow. And just feel it expanding in a kind of egg shape. And that's coming through you, and it's 360 degrees. So it's coming up through you and out and around you. And it's just going, flooding into your aura, all around you. And allowing it to grow. Don't forget over your head and under your feet. It's spreading out in a lovely egg-like shape. And we're allowing it rather than pushing or forcing it. So if it seems as though yours doesn't quite want to go out, just imagine it like a wave. And it's just spreading out. And then holding it approximately 3 to 4 feet away from your physical body, all around. Don't forget over your head and under your feet. And that's your own energy space. That's your auric field all flooded around your energy field. That's your power that's ready to receive and give spirit some energy to let them know that you are open to receiving energy from them. And now let's imagine that in this lovely, beautiful, bright energy space, there is a door on one side of your energy field. Let's just imagine that door is gently opening. Safe space, beautiful, filled with your own special, spectacular light and energy. Just feel that door opening, or see it, hear it, whichever your senses are receiving. And then now, one of your loved ones from spirit, it could even be a guide, someone you've loved and shared your life with and had precious moments with. It starts to come in through the door, come into your energy. Now you may find that you can be aware of the change of temperature or the energy coming in, and you may also see images in your mind or hear, taste or smell. And we'll have a few quiet moments for you to try to experience this blending of your loved ones. And then just visualize or know or feel they're closing the door behind them, so they are in your energy. They're sharing your space. And if you have an awareness of the energy, take a moment to ask anything you want to know, feel you need to know about them and how they are, or anything they may want you to know at this time. You may find you just know the words as they come to you, or you might hear them. Each one of you is different and unique. There are no rights or wrongs. And now it's time for your loved one to step back, but you can visit this space anytime that you feel you wish. They just wanted to come in this evening, let you know they're there in some way. And so now, as we thank them for coming, just be aware of your loved one. Just beginning to step out of the door once again. And just giving you a cheery wave, knowing you can be together whenever you need to be. And now, as the door just closes very gently, just begin to feel your energy field starting to become reduced. Just bringing the energy in from all of those angles around you, just making it smaller. Drawing in all of the energy again, back towards the center, where that golf ball sized piece of light began. And now, as it comes back to the center, just past that light that you've used, once again down through the lower half of your body, just to put some extra grounding in there. And then bring your mind back into the session. Open your eyes if they were closed. And then perhaps having a wriggle and a move around, just to bring the mind and the body back together. Okay, well, I hope that some of you enjoyed that and hope you were able to. Oh, you're very welcome, Sandy. Thank you. So pleased that you, oh, that's lovely. It's good to see your comments here. Thank you. It's really good that, you know, you're having some great experiences from this, but don't forget, it was only very subtle. It's all about the practice. So there's always more that we can do to make it stronger. So thank you everyone for taking part with me. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. And yeah, if you had a good experience or an interesting experience, or if you communicated with a loved one, just post that comment into the chat and let us know. I'd love to see more of those comments coming in. And while you're at it, if you've got any questions for Donna, type your questions for Donna into the Q&A tab. And in a minute, we're going to have some time to go through your questions for Donna. And yeah, we'll get to those in a second. But Donna, I've got a few more questions for you. What characteristics are important for a medium? What's important when it comes to mediumship?
Well, on a practical level, a medium to start development needs to be emotionally well. It's very important to be emotionally well, and to have worked on your own stuff. And if if there's still things that you need to resolve, it's really important, I think, for the medium to put that work in to do that. Because once we start working with the sensitivity of spirit, that can bring up all kinds of sensitivities and changes. So if there is anything underlying that hasn't been resolved, it can bring it to the surface. So first and foremost, be emotionally well. It does help if you're physically well, and I appreciate not everybody, you know, is able to have good health, but it's just that it's easier sometimes and more comfortable to be that way. But I know plenty of mediums as well that have had issues, but emotionally well is really good. And also I feel just you want to help. I feel somebody needs, if you're stepping out on a path of mediumship, you're stepping out on a path of healing. So wanting to help and to heal is very important, as well as equality. And truthful and honest, all these things make such a difference. You know, a medium needs to be able to say if they're not receiving the information that perhaps their recipient wants to hear. They need to be able to say if it's not quite working for them, and equally if it is. So honesty at every level as well. And I think just a sense of reverence and a sense of humour. You have to have a sense of humour as a medium. Trust me, if you don't have that, you might find yourself in some funny situations. So I think some really good, strong qualities there. So strength of mind, strength of character, a good sense of humour, and a real sense of yourself, and also the respect and reverence for spirit. Those would be on my list.
Great, thank you. And that was a great exercise. The first question from Monique is, how do you know if you are able to build your mediumship?
Okay, so Monique, thank you for a great question. It usually starts, I think, with a sense of being drawn to wanting to do this work. So that's the first point of service, I think, is feeling that you want to. And I think experiment and try different exercises and find what works for you. It's really important to say that no two things work for everybody. So it's about finding that individual path. And a good tutor should help you to find that individually rather than just everybody finding the same. So I would say just dive in, enjoy it, and experiment and see what works for you.
Great. So there's a question from Elmin. Are you always tuned into receiving messages, or can you choose when you want to talk and listen to spirit?
Okay, Elmin, thank you. That is a question a lot of people ask me, because we have to be obviously great ambassadors and in service to spirit, but we also have everyday life. Now, I prefer to think of it as zoning in and zoning out. So from my perspective, if I'm thinking about spirit, then they're usually thinking about me. So if I'm going about my everyday life, spirit don't come into my energy unless it's absolutely urgent. I think it's really important to set that boundary. Otherwise, your energy will never rest. There'll never be any peace. You'll never sleep peacefully again, because they'll always be wanting to chit-chatter with you if they know you're always switched on. So discipline's really important.
Okay. Somebody would like to know this. Do you sometimes absorb energy that is not yours? How can you know what is your energy and what is not? And what is the easiest way of releasing it? Emotional or sometimes physical sensations.
Okay, so it is possible, especially whether we're working psychically or mediumistically. It's very easy to be very sensitive, and sometimes you can absorb from other people. What I think is a good measure is, this is why it's so important to know yourself, so that you can kind of know when it's not like you to feel this way or have this sensation, etc. So that can naturally happen by being empathic and just being with people. If you think that you've absorbed energy that doesn't belong to you, best thing to do is, similar to what we've done here, is just sit in a space and create that egg energy, and then just imagine that it's white and it's clear and it's your space only, and that should take care of anything and that should move out of your energy once you do that. And then see how you feel. If you feel better, you've absorbed it from somewhere else.
Okay, great. There's another question. Can everybody become a medium?
Now, I believe that everybody has the ability to be psychic. We spoke about psychic earlier as being aware of our environment, and it's very possible to be aware of flashes of images, upcoming events, when someone needs you. You know, we all do this thing where you're thinking about a loved one or a friend and they text at that same moment, or you've not finished your text and they're texting you. So I believe that everybody comes to this life with that blueprint. However, I do think it takes a certain kind of energy and strength to become a medium. I believe it's possible that everyone can receive spirit messages, but if we're talking about going on to become a medium, a working medium, then we do really have to be quite strong and go through the training that I believe is required for that.
Okay. Dagmar would like to know the following. How do I know that I was really connecting or communicating with my ancestors and that I was not just making it up myself?
Do you know, I'm smiling, Dagmar, because so many of my students say the same thing. Now, here's a little technique that I'd love to share with you and all of you that really works. If you think that you have any doubt, and it may be your loved ones or your ancestors, I would say, and they won't mind you doing this, try to push them away from your thoughts and your energy. And I guarantee you, if it's not your thought, if it's them, they will come straight back in. That really does work. It's only quick, but it's just, if I always say, if in doubt, push it out. And then if they really are there, they're coming in again.
Okay, that's worth remembering. I'll remember that one. Okay, here's an interesting question. David wants to know how he can connect to an ancestor who died in 1879.
Oh, David, that's really interesting. I'm guessing you're doing some family history there, maybe. And you would just do exactly what you would do, with your mediumship. Set the intention, David. Let your ancestors know what it is that you're trying to do. And then, it doesn't matter how long they've been in the spirit world, they still have the ability to connect if they want to do so. So I mean, it's quite a long earthly time, isn't it? And then what I would say is just see what comes to you, but always ask the spirit if they can give you something that you don't know, that perhaps you can research about them. So just a little thought, don't make it complicated, something that you can maybe find out that can clarify because you didn't know it, but it came to you. So then apart from the energy that you may feel from the ancestor, if you need that proof, that's what you could try.
Great, thank you. Dania wants to know if you always manage to be detached from the message you need to deliver. How can you not get emotional all the time?
Okay, Danielle, that's so important. And one of the things I always say to my students is that if you have the opportunity to take a course in basic counselling skills alongside your mediumship, that is a very important thing. And sometimes it is difficult not to become involved, especially when something is very poignant. But it is important to try to develop that sense, as we said, maybe through some counselling training, to be able to manage that and to not be absorbed in that. Because, if you go on to be a medium, even if it's just for family and friends, if you absorb everything, then you're going to feel pretty drained and quite emotional. So I would say it's finding that way to just detach. If you're in training with a tutor, the tutor will help you to do that. And that is just simply by asking the energy of the message to step back a little bit, so you're still aware of it, but it's not overpowering your own energy. There's lots of things that you can do. So as I said, first and foremost, some simple tools through the counselling process of standing back from information will really help you.
Okay, great. Now, there are a lot of questions, but I think we've just got time for one more from Lisa. And this is also quite interesting. I feel conflicted about the knowledge that my loved ones might still be here. I want my loved ones to be free and not stuck. Do you get the sense that many spirits are stuck in this human and earthly realm if they are able to communicate with you?
Okay, so that is very interesting. And there's two kinds of points with this, Lisa. So I believe that and I've found from my own personal experience rather than just believing, that if a spirit leaves this life and goes into the spirit realm in a healthy way or has received the healing, they can just pop back and say hello and let you know we're here and give some support and be quite happy to go on. Spirit that become stuck in this realm are very often spirit that find it very difficult to move on from the emotion of their family, and that often needs the help of a healer or a medium to help them to release that and to help them to realize they can move on and they can still come back and connect, but they don't have to stay stuck with it. I hope that helps.
All right, I'm sure that will help. So thank you very much for answering those questions. I'm sorry we don't have time for more. But Donna, do you have any final comments or thoughts or anything else that you wish to share before we wrap things up?
Well, I think all I can do is speak from my heart and say that if you feel that you want to develop your mediumship, or you're on that path where you're developing your mediumship, just follow the call. From my experience, spirits see that, you know, that we want to do that work and they will connect with us. It is a vocation, I think, more than a choice, even if we think it is. So I would say that if you feel you want to be in the service of spirit, just follow it with your heart. Never forget the reason why you began, those first times when you reach out for spirit. No matter how much work you do or how busy you might become, just remembering the fundamentals of why we do what we do, and never forget the impact of the healing on others that you can achieve by giving your time and energy to spirit.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that, Don. It's really been a wonderful hour spent with you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us and our audience. I'm seeing all the thank yous coming in here. I can see they appreciate it. They're just rolling in. So thank you.
Bless you.
For your comments.
Thank you so much. Could I just say, Mark, I just want to say thank you, everybody. I'm probably jumping in here, but it's lovely. And I appreciate, thank you for welcoming me. Thank you for your kindness. And I really have loved being here with you all this evening, including Mark. I love to send Cindy and hope she's feeling better soon.
And finally, Donna, just once again, thank you so much for your time and your energy this evening. It's really been appreciated. Thank you so much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you again.